This has been a very interesting hearing. Mr. Waltz, welcome to Oversight. Yes, it usually gets like this. Look, let's be very clear. This isn't about Hunter Biden's white privilege. It's about Hunter Biden's Democrat privilege. Because Donald Trump Jr. showed up for 5 congressional subpoenas. There was never this circus where he was subpoenaed by House Democrats and he showed up on the Senate side or showed up at the White House to answer in some fake, phony, lame press conference, not actually going to the House and doing what he was compelled by a subpoena to do. Hunter Biden did that.
What you're about to watch is a perfect example of what happens when facts collide with political spin. This exchange highlights a much bigger debate happening across the country. On one side, Representative Byron Donalds argues that the law should be applied fairly and consistently, regardless of who is involved. On the other, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her supporters push back, defending their allies while shifting the conversation away from the central issue. It's a pattern that's become increasingly common in today's political landscape. Critics argue that AOC and members of the squad promote progressive policies they believe are taking the country in the wrong direction, often relying on emotional appeals, deflection, and changing the subject when difficult questions arise. Meanwhile, Byron Donalds takes a direct approach, responding with arguments centered on facts and accountability. As you watch this full exchange, pay attention to the contrast in how both sides present their case. Decide for yourself which arguments are more convincing. If you enjoy political analysis and want to see more breakdowns like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Now, let's dive into the full exchange.
Look, let's be very clear. This isn't about Hunter Biden's white privilege. It's about Hunter Biden's Democrat privilege. Because Donald Trump Jr. showed up for 5 congressional subpoenas. There was never this circus where he was subpoenaed by House Democrats and he showed up on the Senate side or showed up at the White House to answer in some fake, phony, lame press conference, not actually going to the House and doing what he was compelled by a subpoena to do. Hunter Biden did that. And then he has the unmitigated gall to show up here when we know that we're going through actually the legislation for contempt with, by the way, Mr. Chairman, we should actually get to the legislation of contempt. The speechifying is great, but let's do our business, members. He has the gall to come here, show up, and then when the Democrats are saying, hey, he wants to speak, he leaves. This is a joke. This is a farce. The man has been subpoenaed by Congress. Oh, and by the way, the January 6th committee, Mr. Raskin, which you did sit on, by the way, that was not a normally ordered committee of Congress because Nancy Pelosi did not want the Republican members that then Leader McCarthy put up.
According to the courts, it was.
My time, sir.
Will you yield for a correction?
I was respectful of your time. I didn't say anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward with our business. He should be held in contempt. There was a subpoena. He did not answer it. Any other American will be held in contempt by Congress. Any other. This is Democrat privilege of the highest order. Let's do our jobs. I yield.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address briefly, quickly, that moment about privilege and all of this that we're seeing here. It was a very beautiful speech. As also the Republican side had mentioned in their many raisings of the January 6th committee, that it's not just Hunter Biden, you, me, any individual subject to equal treatment under the law, to be held up to accountability under the law, but it is also these committees and this committee that is subject to oversight and law. We must comply with the law here as well. Now, I may be one of the very few people that actually believes in Congress, in this country. But I do, and many of us do here. And we have an obligation to engage in good faith participation to execute and comply with the subpoena. The chairman said in front of the country several times to Hunter Biden, you can show up here in front of the world, in front of the public. Hunter Biden took him up on that offer. He said, I will show up in public. I will show up in public. He showed up here today. He showed up here in the past. And Mr. Chairman, I know you do your best with what you've got, but you've got members here that have submitted falsified evidence to the record. You have members here that have submitted and mischaracterized closed-door hearings, and people want to say back and forth at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what party it's happened from. You've got members who've engaged in revenge porn in this committee. So it is understandable why Hunter Biden would want to testify in front of the public for the American people to be able to witness that testimony for themselves. You've got members who've defied subpoenas. You've got members who we are 1 year into the term asking what the rules are at the beginning of the committee. The book was given to us on day one. And so what we should do is allow the man to testify. I believe in the power of the Oversight Committee. Frankly, I believe in it regardless of whether Republicans or Democrats have the chair, because I believe that this committee should have the power of oversight. And we cannot do that on a partisan basis. And so for that, I implore this committee to allow Hunter Biden to testify publicly. I implore and I ask for that to happen. And we cannot do that by getting engaged in this back and forth on a defiance of a subpoena. Let him comply. Let him do it today. Let him do it tomorrow. But let the man do it. And with that, I yield back to the ranking member.
Thank you, Ms. Ocasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First, it was said in this hearing, Mr. Chairman, about you specifically, that you repeatedly said you would give Mr. Biden any opportunity. He could choose which one to come and speak in front of this committee. He could do it by deposition. He could do it by open hearing. It was up to him. The truth of the matter, though, is that the chairman's words are not binding. Like, no other member's words of Congress are really not binding. The binding article.
Point of order. Does the chairman agree with that? Point of order. Does the chairman agree?
Are you going to restore my time?
Point of order. Just point of order. Okay. Does the chairman agree that the chairman's words are not binding on the committee?
That's not a point of order. It has nothing to do with the order of this hearing. Thank you. Can I go back to 4 minutes and 34 seconds? That's where I was before I was interrupted by Mr. Raskin.
Yes, reset the clock.
Thank you. What is binding is the actual written document, the written language in the subpoena, because a subpoena from this committee is also signed off on by the clerk of the House. That is the binding document that matters here. That is what governs. That's number one. Number two, that was said in this hearing. It was said that our witnesses said that there was no basis for an impeachment. But remember, members on the Democrat side of the aisle, what was said by Mr. Turley at the time was that there was plenty of evidence for the continuation of an impeachment inquiry. And the purpose of that hearing was the relevance basis for an impeachment inquiry. The House has now voted for an impeachment inquiry. And one of the first things that the House did after the vote of an impeachment inquiry was to subpoena Hunter Biden to appear. Hunter Biden has evaded that subpoena. So flagrantly did he evade it that he decided to show up at the Senate side to give a press conference, and Eric Swalwell, a member of the House, helped him get that time on the Senate side to give a press conference. That's a flagrant violation of a congressional subpoena. Secondarily, he has the gall to show up here when we're actually discussing contempt. And he didn't stay. He was sitting right over there. He's not here now. He said he wants to talk. He could have stayed through the whole proceeding. He chose to leave. That's his business. But he was subpoenaed to come here back in December. He chose not to of his own volition. He's in violation of that subpoena, a subpoena that was executed with the signature of the clerk of the House of Representatives. That is the document that is binding. That's what we work off of. Mr. Chairman, I actually want to submit for the record an article from The Hill written by Jonathan Turley, and it is titled Eric Swalwell and the Politics of Contempt.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I'm glad something got admitted to the record. A couple other points. One quick point I want to make, and this is in reference to the minority's report about this $7.8 million. I want the minority to understand one very important distinction between Presidents Biden and President Trump. President Trump has an international real estate portfolio that he has amassed over decades. I'm quite sure if you go back through all of the hotel receipts before he was president of the United States, that you had foreign dignitaries staying at Trump hotels all across the world.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm not going to yield, Mr. Raskin. I'm making a point, because they're actually very nice hotels. They look good. People like staying there. President Trump was not running the Trump Organization when he was president of the United States. To my recollection, Eric Trump, the president's son, was actually running the Trump Organization when President Trump was president of the United States. So if he had a portfolio of hotels and people choose, through Expedia, through Kayak, through Hotels.com, if they choose to go and stay there, how is that the president being in violation of what the emoluments clause? That's what you're citing? Stop. Ladies and gentlemen, America, this is ridiculous. The Biden family has no business. They've never had a business except for politics. And the one thing that the Oversight Committee, in conjunction with the Ways and Means Committee and in conjunction with the Judiciary Committee, has always been able to demonstrate is that they shook down foreign nations for millions, 26 million at the latest count and growing, millions. And there was never any business entity involved except public corruption and a pay-for-play scheme. We have questions for Hunter Biden. We issued a subpoena for him to answer said questions. He ignored a congressional subpoena as a private citizen. There are many attorneys on the other side of the aisle.
Wow, that exchange had a lot to unpack. From beginning to end, it was a fascinating back and forth. But Byron Donalds wasted no time making his point. He immediately shifted the focus by arguing that the issue wasn't about privilege based on race, but about what he described as political favoritism. That opening set the tone for everything that followed. He pointed to Donald Trump Jr.'s previous appearances before Congress to argue that there was a double standard in how different political figures were being treated. Whether people agree with that comparison or not, it was clearly the foundation of his argument. Then, the conversation took a sharp turn when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responded. Rather than staying focused on the subpoena itself, she broadened the discussion to other issues involving the committee and congressional leadership. Donalds clearly saw that as an attempt to move attention away from the original question, and that's where the debate became less about the subpoena and more about each side's broader political message. One of the biggest points of disagreement centered on whether public comments from the committee chairman affected the subpoena. Donalds argued that they did not, insisting that only the formal written subpoena carried legal weight. From his perspective, the paperwork, not public statements, was what mattered. That became one of the central themes of his rebuttal. As the discussion continued, additional topics were introduced, including unrelated controversies involving members of Congress. Donalds treated those points as distractions from the core issue, repeatedly steering the conversation back to the subpoena itself. His position remained consistent throughout. The focus should stay on whether a congressional subpoena was issued and whether it was followed. By the end of the exchange, Donald summarized his argument by emphasizing what he viewed as the central fact of the dispute, that the subpoena existed and should have been complied with. He contrasted that with what he saw as efforts to redirect the conversation toward unrelated political controversies. If you found this debate interesting, you're going to want to see what comes next. Away from the committee hearing, Byron Donalds speaks more freely about his experiences serving alongside AOC and offers his perspective without the interruptions and procedural back and forth. Let's watch that clip next.
I serve on a committee with Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, you've heard of her. Okay. And she literally believes that we can print whatever we want. It doesn't matter how much we borrow. It doesn't matter how much we spend. But she can believe all that while she drives her nice little Tesla and lives in one of the most expensive apartments in Washington, D.C. You see, the left loves to deride capitalism, but they actually love capitalism. They love what it creates for them. But they want you and they want me and they want every hardworking American to bend the knee. But America has woken up and we have realized that we're not going down a socialist road and we're going to fight.
That's the perspective Byron Donalds is putting forward. And it's clear he believes these policy differences aren't just theoretical. They have real consequences for the country. He argues that some progressive lawmakers underestimate the economic impact of government spending and promote ideas he believes are fiscally irresponsible. In his view, there's also a disconnect between the values they advocate and the lifestyles they lead, a criticism conservatives have frequently leveled at figures like AOC. Whether you agree with him or not, Donalds has built a reputation for taking those arguments head-on instead of avoiding the debate. He doesn't shy away from challenging ideas he disagrees with, and that's a big reason why many conservatives see him as one of the strongest voices in Congress. Now, I'm curious to hear from you. Do you think more lawmakers are becoming willing to challenge AOC and members of the squad? Or do you see this exchange as an exception rather than the rule? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Looking at the bigger picture, this hearing showcased two very different approaches to political debate. Byron Donalds focused on making his case through legal arguments, procedural points, and his interpretation of the facts. AOC responded by broadening the discussion to other issues she viewed as relevant to the broader context. Depending on your perspective, one approach may have been more persuasive than the other. Either way, moments like this continue to shape the national political conversation, and committee hearings often become the stage where those disagreements play out in full view of the public. Thanks for watching this breakdown. If you enjoyed the analysis and want to see more coverage of major political moments, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who enjoy following congressional debates. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.